Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Vivid Earth. Today I've got a special South African guest, Monette Risi, and she's a very interesting lady that I've gotten to know a little bit with a very interesting story. So I thought it would be very good to bring her on. And I know a lot of our South African audience are looking for a little bit more insights on South Africa, and a lot of people are interested in sovereignty and those kind of things. And that's what Monette is also very interested in. So, yeah, without further ado, let me just give a quick introduction. Monette sees herself as a spiritual being having an earthly experience, I think, like many of us. She's a mother of four children and a grandchild. She's been an independent thinker, visionary entrepreneur all her life. And I guess that's what many of us have in mind, in common, sorry, because we think out of the box. We've never liked to conform. We've never liked to not speak our truth. But she's traveled Africa, extensively, lived in, traveled to Tanzania, lived in Zambia, back in South Africa, and from what I understand, couldn't be happier. But I'm going to hand over to you so she can tell you in her own words how she came to where she is today. Monette, welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity. It really is awesome to be here. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, I have done quite a bit in my life. And one of the things that I started in 2020 when the whole COVID, although I don't know if we can say this because
We'll just
of
start of you
YouTube,
got
but
words,
when the
the
whole
pandemic and
pandemic started,
hmm.
yeah. So we're just, yeah. And when that all started, it was actually a bittersweet moment for me because then I realized, oh my goodness, when I used to use that mantra of the world has gone crazy and left me sober or sane, really made sense because when I saw this pandemic, I was like, okay, there really is something that is absolutely wrong. And it sent me on I was actually in Zambia at the time, and I really did appreciate that. God is awesome. He always puts you where you're meant to be because in Zambia, we never had any lockdowns. I think if
Mm.
I was in South Africa with those lockdowns, I think I would have been arrested and probably been in jail. There is just no ways I could have accepted that. So I was in Zambia at the time, and yes, we'd wear our masks, and I was quite nervous in Zambia because their machines didn't work. I used those like gun things, when they were testing your temperature. And I actually said to one of my colleagues that if they ever stop me, because in an African country, you do get quite nervous because, you never know all the things that can happen. And I said, if somebody stops me with a high temperature, I'm running because they were saying that they would take you and put you in a ward. And I said, just know I'm ducking, I'm turning around and I'm going to be running. But that never happened. And so, yeah, I was quite lucky that I wasn't involved in any of the lockdowns, but it definitely did wake me up. And I was called back to South Africa when my dad had dementia, well, has still got dementia. That is a very interesting subject and quite telling in its own way. And in that time, when I was looking after my dad, I then started going down the rabbit hole of because that just after that, it was the jabs and everything else that was coming on. And that's when I went down the rabbit holes. But I was more involved, and I think you and I have had this discussion as well, where in the international stuff, I'd be looking at what Canada and Australia and America, and, I knew more about the Americans than what I knew about South Africa. And I then stumbled across the gift of truth, which was, it was talking about this emancipation. And at that stage, it was emancipation. Today, we talk about politically status corrected. But it was in that time that I looked at this and I thought, gee, this is quite exciting. There is a tribe in South Africa that I can get involved in because it was a very, very lonely process. I think if we speak to most of us at this time, it was extremely lonely and actually scary. It was so scary to see how people reacted to this whole pandemic. I mean, and even now, we share this about common law where we say that we want to be judged by our peers and, that, we want to take it where we have this jury system. And somebody said it to me, and it was no truer word when she said, would you really like to be judged by the people you know? And I looked at this and I thought, oh, that is, yeah. Say no more, especially because I'm seen as a conspiracy theorist and everything. I know that I'll probably be stoned half the time. So I'm kind of going, I might take my chances in court. But anyway, so, but yeah, so basically what happened was with this pandemic, when I saw the reaction of people, like one day I was sick in the Cape and I had a mask on because I just didn't want to spread the disease. And I had quite a bad cold. So I put this mask on because I didn't want to go coughing and splurting all over because then I really would have been seen. And it was such an amazing experience. And I'm going to say amazing because I never noticed it before that day, but when I walked through the shopping center to Checkers actually to go and get my stuff, I had people eye locking me and going like smiling. Whereas when I had my mask off, no one would react to me, no one would look at me. In fact, they would always look away. So I didn't realize that until I actually put that mask on. And I was like, oh my goodness, people actually respond to you better with the mask. And that scared me. I can't tell you, because that is where I'm saying, if we had to be judged by our peers at that stage, I would have been stoned, even though what we know today. So, yeah, but anyway, so getting on to, learning about South Africa, and that there was a group involved in South Africa, and at that stage it was Gift of Truth, which was SA Jewel. I started with them and soon realized that there's so much infighting, which is so sad at this stage, because common law is so important, and it's God's natural way, and it's a natural law that we should be living. But with all the internal stuff that was going on and all of these vibes, and so it led me from assembly to assembly. But one of the things that I will always be grateful for is the Gift of Truth channel. I do believe that the education that they shared was amazing. So from there, I learned about bills of exchange. So I immediately, within 3 months, I did a bill of exchange. I did all my documents, everything that I had to do, and I submitted it to the bank, and I'm still going on with the bank now with the bill of exchange. And I know that a lot of people haven't had success with it, and I haven't had success with it, but I can say that I haven't paid my bond in the last like 20 odd months. And they don't know what to do with me because I've been fighting with the pen, and I specifically said to them that I will not be signing any NDAs. So they mustn't come with, oh, well, let's, just get rid of you. I just specifically, because I'm at the ombudsman with it. And I just said, one of the things I'm telling you now, and the remedy is that I'm not signing an NDA. And the reason for this is because I want to do this for everybody. I don't want to be fighting every single month with a pen and if I can get a win, and there's a few of us that are going this way, that we're not signing NDAs and sharing within our groups, all of our little successes and that we are and not having. But most of us, what the Americans call a success, us South Africans don't. And the Americans reckon that when they throw your case out of court, or when they take the case off the roll, you've had a success. And for us that are fighting this battle, we feel that isn't really a success. A success is when you actually get the stamp, like, this is it. You can sell your house and you can get it going. So yeah, so that's basically what I've been involved in for the last 2 years, other than, leaving the business world. So I'm very fortunate. I call myself semi-retired. As I said, I auctioned all of these things that I had. That was a spiritual awakening I had. And it was just God saying, it's easier to get through the eye of the needle, if you don't have a lot of stuff. And I literally sold everything I did. It was an amazing experience, and not look back. It's been a tough walk. It has been a tough walk. And here I am today. I've joined other assemblies as well, but I just don't think I have the personality to be able to be stuck in a box in a corporate kind of situation. So from there, and learning so much now from that time of BOEs and all of that, I've just been doing so much research on South Africa and where we come from. And it's made me realize that South Africa is so special. We were one of the very, very first countries ever to become a corporation. Now, there's many people that will say we're not. We are. Yeah, we're a corporation. So much
well,
so
I knew
that
we were a
I've
corporation, but not one of the first countries to become. That's
one
interesting.
of the very first.
Do you know
And if you
when?
think,
Well, I think I've.
well, I'm going to say from the VOC, 1652 was
Right.
definitely the start of that. And quite interestingly, many people that are watching this, or if they do know about our straw man and the SESQV Trust, etc., that was started in 1662. And in 1652, the VOC. So I reckon in my own, I don't have facts on this, and a lot of my knowledge comes intuitively. But if I'm wrong, it's a lovely rabbit hole to go down, and let's prove us right or wrong. But I reckon like just the dates are so close. And because South Africa is on the trade route, and I don't know if you know about Port Edward Island and Marion Island. So that is where the British have basically taken us and where they don't know what to do with us. So in other words, the British that came here with their British mother and father had a South African child. They then shipped that. It's even in our Citizenship Act where they kind of processed us in Port Edward Island. So we were at sea. So kind of the dates and everything fit with this whole maritime and the 1666 SQV Trust because you lost at sea and then they put us into Marion Island and Port Edward Island. So a lot of this is me filling in with rose-colored glasses maybe and just trying to make a story out of it. But the dates kind of, they kind of work together. So yeah,
Mm.
so in
So sorry if I can just
1652,
mention, yeah, my
sure.
research it showed obviously that, maritime law came from when there were a lot of seafaring, you know, most of the jobs were seafaring. So the husband would leave his family, he would go, merchant at sea or, exploring other continents. And they, the government then said, it would be quite convenient to take hold of their wealth. So what we're going to do, we're going to say, if they don't come back after 7 years, they'll be declared lost at sea, and we can actually kind of take some of that wealth and do with it what we please, because women also didn't have many rights back then. But it's interesting because now you're connecting the dots. South Africa was discovered first by the Portuguese, right? Well, who discovered us
Portuguese
first?
in Spain, and that was
Yeah.
early 16, in fact, actually 1300s, 1300 and something or whatever. I mean, a few years
Mm.
between there, but in the 1300s, they were discovered. And then they had some kind of war between themselves. And then, yeah, but between the Spanish, and they were fighting basically for really, South Africa has never ever been a solid country. We were always different provinces, different colonies, and then they just lumped us together as South Africa.
Yeah.
I know at this stage I'm going to bring Raleigh's name into it because he's been doing so much research on it, and basically he definitely gives me a lot of info, and we do a lot of researching. But when at the bottom, with all of that, it was just the Portuguese kept Transvaal because of the waterways. So everything about South Africa has been about the waterways, about the trade routes,
Trade
about
routes. Yeah.
transport. So we were never a country. We've always been these different, where I'm now in KZN, it's totally different to where you are in the Cape, which is totally different to the Transvaal. And then it's the Orange Free State. So those were the four major, but we were basically all independent. Each province as we know it now was all pretty much independent, and then they just lumped us together as the Southern Africa. And even the British, they started up in Zimbabwe where they did a whole, the South African British company was started because of that and the Transvaal. And so we've been a corporation. We were definitely of the first. And then I think close with us is obviously Canada, Australia, and Ireland, which is also one of them. So we were the ones that were definitely, and our history and our acts and our statutes and our ordinances, just to freak everybody out with all of those. But yeah, they honestly show that we're very, very similar. We have a very similar history. In fact, Canada also has a Port Edward Island and pretty much used for the same things. So yeah, we are tied. And even if you go back to when the South African Reserve Bank, that was started because of the Canadian, I think it was the Canadian or Australian, but I think it was actually the Canadians that were also involved with old Jan Smuts to start that whole story. And if we know that, I don't know if everyone knows the story about Jan Smuts, but that's another bottle of wine, and very, very interesting to go down to find out exactly what he was, and total cabal, total cabal. Yeah, so the cabals had their hands on us for quite a long time. And one of the big things that I've realized now as well is it's the saddest is Nelson Mandela. Now I don't know how deep I go under that, but old Gibson McCluncher
Now,
from
I've already
Mozambique.
informed my audience, but maybe
Wonderful.
some people
So
have
old
not heard
Gibson,
this, so we can go there for
yeah,
sure. I just want to say,
my,
just before we move on, it
hmm.
makes total sense because South Africa, I mean, most people still don't think that's a country. They just think that's a region because it was never a country. It was just a group of colonies that, as you said, they lumped together and they call it South Africa, which makes total sense. And then you have Southwest Africa, which is Namibia today. And so these were, because there were so many different colonies occupying all parts of the country, very diverse country as well. If people do any research, anyone who's not from South Africa, we have 11 official languages. I mean, that's just a start. And it's a very diverse country. But we can go down the Mandela rabbit hole. I'm going to just mute myself because somebody's cutting trees. And I'm also going to just close the door. So go for it.
You've muted. Okay. So yeah, so with Nelson Mandela, one of the biggest things that I've actually found out now just recently is that in 1994 he signed us back into the British Commonwealth. So that was one of the biggest surprises that I can honestly say of 2024 was my biggest eye opener. I mean, I just would never have thought that we had gone in back into the British to be signed in as a British Commonwealth. So that 100% plays into the Cabal playbook. And when I mentioned this to one of my colleagues from MK Party, I said, but explain that to me. And he's never come back. He just said, what? And was all surprised, but didn't actually come back and say it. But I mean, I am sure that all the politicians and everybody knows this. And in 1994, signing us back in, I mean, I have the act, I can always, share it with you and we can put it in as a link. But in that act as well, we lost the public holiday that was always the 31st of May. But what makes this really crazy is that in 1961, there was a referendum that was held before when we exited it. The way when we left the British Commonwealth in 1961, there was a referendum that was held to say, okay, we're leaving that, but leaving the Commonwealth, and that was due to, from what I can comprehend and put it all together, was because of the apartheid era. Then in 1994, fine that it's now we're no longer part of the apartheid era, but then it was never a referendum that was signed. So there is like this gray area because there was a referendum that we did with the yes and no vote, which we all know about, but there was nothing that was really there to say that, we're going back into the British Commonwealth. And I can't see the whole of South Africa being happy with that. I can't see them being excited about that in any way. So we were just told that we lost the holiday, or we did just lose the holiday. And we would think because we lost Paul Kruger's holiday as well, 16th of, I think it was December at that stage or whatever. So we lost a whole lot of, no, I think it was I think that was the 10-10. We always had a holiday on the 10th of the 10th. And so I think it was just probably, everybody thought, oh, well, it's one of those. But it wasn't because, well, now we were back into the becoming a British subject and back into understanding how Port Edward Island, they processed us. And very interesting. So, yeah, he signed us back in and very interesting rabbit hole to go down with that one as well. But yeah.
Well, yeah, and as we know, it wasn't, well, it was him, but it also wasn't him because he wasn't really ruling the country. He was like everyone else and all other leaders, most other leaders, just an actor, right? And as you mentioned, played by, is it Dixon or Jackson? Dixon Makamba.
Gibson
Gibson. I
McCluncher or
always
something. I
get
always
those.
get his name. I always call him Gibson. Yeah.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
Mozambique. And that's why I went on to actually marry a Mozambican woman. His own wife wanted to divorce him when he got out of jail because he had a different shoe size. She was like, this is not my husband. So, and I'm just surprised. I mean, there must be a lot of people that know about this, at least the people that he was in prison with, like, the old, comrades, as they used to call it. Surely they should know. I mean, they were seeing this guy every day, and then suddenly now out of jail, he had this kind of weird accent and looked a little bit different. And
But I
but
think
yeah,
they were all bought in on it. Because if you think
yeah,
of it, maybe that is why Chris Hani was
yeah,
taken out. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Because he knew it and he wasn't going to take it. And the same thing. I mean, if we look, I mean, this is what is one of the saddest things, I think, out of all of this is that everything that we have learned. I mean, I'll be honest and say that when the Nelson Mandela died, but now we go on to the white hats. And I mean, I know that your listeners know about the white hats and that. So, they've always, they said that they've been calming us and giving us comms and, to wake everyone up. But I can't quite remember when Nelson Mandela officially died. It was about 2014, 15, somewhere there. I don't know, but I stood in the state line to see him at Pretoria. I mean, that was how I was still so asleep, and I was like, I was going to go and see Nelson Mandela. So when I talk about this, it's like for me, it was so heartbreaking. I used to call him Madiba, and I had all the stuff for it and his books and that. So we've done, but the com really, looking back on it in the movie where we're living, very long movie, it's getting rather boring. I'm not boring, but definitely tiring. I could speed
Yeah.
it up. My popcorn's finished and I'm on the kernels. I need another bucket. But anyway, but in that time, I mean, the com there must have been when he fell out of the ambulance. I mean, come on, fell out of the ambulance on the highway.
I
You know what I
didn't
mean?
hear that.
Yeah, when they were
Oh, I
taking him
didn't.
to Pretoria. So they were taking him to Pretoria on the highway. The ambulance, he fell out on the highway and they picked him up. It was all over 702. And they picked him up and put him back in the ambulance. Then he went into the hospital. I think it was at Fister or something, whatever that hospital with a V is in Pretoria. And then people were outside doing the vigil and the wake. And then he died. And then there was that whole queue. I never made it onto the bus. God is awesome in his way. I never made it onto the bus, but I was in that queue because I was going to go and see him lying in state. And but yeah, so that was a com. I mean, surely that was a com. Today you can look back and go, and especially now because we know it
Maybe they
wasn't.
also swapped out the bodies. Who knows what really happened there, you know?
He fell out of the ambulance, honestly. I mean, they forgot to lock the door. And I tell you, John Robbie at that stage, I don't know what's happened to old John Robbie. I don't know if he was, I mean, sorry, John, I always used to listen to him, but I don't know if he was ever captured or not. But I think definitely our other leaders and that were because they've got to have known about it, which makes us think about the leaders that are out there today. Like, are you really telling the people the truth? Because I can't see being in KZN now, any Zulu man being under the crown. But yet I do know that there are trusts and that are there to protect and are there for, our indigenous, the Zulus, the causes. I know that there are trusts there, but yeah, I can't comprehend how they don't, how happy they would be if they found out that they were still under the crown.
Yeah, and people don't even acknowledge that. Even, the same with signing us back into the Commonwealth. You speak to somebody about that and they're just like confused. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like why? Why does it make a difference? What is the issue? Meantime,
Yeah.
being a corporation, and I think that that's maybe something that we can touch on now, with discussing even with the assemblies. When I contacted you about the assemblies was because as I said in the beginning, it was, SA Jural, which was started then by Brother Thomas, BT, and he started that through the work from Anna van Reicht or Ritz, or there's so many different ways to say her name. And he followed her, and then he started this SA Jural, which is a good concept. I mean, it really is amazing. And that I think for me, when I joined, was I was like, oh, finally, firstly, the world kind of started making sense. It didn't make it a much nicer place because we still drummed under this, but it was just so nice to think that, gee, there's an opportunity now to create an alternative government and to start waking up people and to get people, as we were chatting, earlier, where we're looking at all being self-governed. I think everybody is wanting to go back to that now. I think
Yeah.
that's the whole world trend. I think that's what Trump is actually promoting for everybody in his own way, is to
Yeah.
become sovereign and go back to God's law and not being born with a noose around your leg.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was for me as well. I came across David Strait's work, maybe could be 4 years now. I don't remember the dates. And I was just fascinated. And I went down the rabbit hole for some reason. I, like you, got completely hooked in, you know, common law and how the legal system really works. And, I've gone down all the rabbit holes as well, heavily since, well, kind of starting in 2019 to go down, and then 2020, as many of us realized, like something is very wrong. And and yeah, I just listened to all his webinars, anyone that I could find online, and for hours and hours and hours and hours. And then, like you, found somebody in South Africa that was kind of speaking that same language, gift of truth, and I was so excited. And it's amazing then to just say, okay, there's some people that actually make sense to me, and I feel like I can be part of a tribe, because it was a lonely journey for many of us, because everyone around us were just like, are you crazy? What are you talking about? And we just couldn't, as much as we educated and wanted to family and friends, it just didn't land at all. And I think, for a reason, because can you hear the cutting in the background?
it's okay. Very, very
Like always
subtly.
at the worst times they decide to cut trees. Anyway, um, I don't know where I was now. But anyway, so it's just that community, you find your tribe online, you find them wherever, you just, when the time is right, you come across them.
Yeah.
And but it is a pity today, that there seems to be a lot of people doing kind of similar things, and not, instead of uniting and coming together, everyone is like insisting on their little universe, which I understand, because if there's fundamental differences in opinion, you don't want to kind of associate yourself with something, because we're all kind of figuring this out. We're doing the research, we're figuring out where were we all before this maritime legal system was placed upon us. Common law, what does it mean to really correct your status, and what is the process? And everyone has a different opinion on that. So perhaps it's part of the journey and part of the process, but I do hope that all these assemblies that have now popped up will unite and find the common ground, because divided we fall, united we
I think
stand.
people.
And there's nothing you can say against that. The truth is, we need to unite, because we are ruled by the 1% on this planet. And unless we unite and put our differences aside and find a way to get some common ground, we're not going to be able to fight that enemy. So, fortunately, things are moving along quite speedily now. And I think, it will take some time for this common law thing to land, but perhaps also it could happen fast. I heard some time ago, could have been maybe years by now, maybe 2 years ago, that the bar exam will be changing to common law in 2026. So, and what I'm seeing them do now is they don't kind of, I mean, the white hats, they don't destroy things completely. They rather repurpose them. And perhaps the legal system will be transformed and will go back to common law. It will go back to, you know, a jury of peers. But in order to have a successful jury of peers, people need to be on the same page, and they need to
Yeah.
understand what is the truth. And that is such a tricky subject now, because everyone seems to have a different truth. Because the masses have been thoroughly brainwashed, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, it's all very interesting. So where are you now on your journey for, within the common law kind of area?
Like I was saying, to you today, I feel like I'm in a crossroads because I don't feel that I can get involved in assemblies. I can't get involved in all of this bickering and, we better than you and our, stationery is better than yours and that kind of thing. And I've even been involved in it. You get caught up in it. And I just feel like that is so counterproductive that I feel like there needs to be a drive. Like I wish, like that's also such a wishy-washy way to put it, but we don't have a Donald Trump that can, come up and we can all rally behind. And I think that that has been the success of the Americans. I was in America in about a year or so ago, and I went to my daughter, and when I was there, just the way they're so patriotic and they love their country. And I really, and I say this with a lot of respect. When we look at the aesthetics of the country, it has got a lot of work. So it is definitely going to be the land of milk and honey architects. I would get there ASAP because I promise you there is so much opportunity because everything is so, there's a beautiful Afrikaans word for it, verniel. It really needs to, have an upgrade. But yet, the Americans are so patriotic, and I believe it's because they've had somebody that they could rally around and have that one. Although we know that Trump is not the savior, and I know a lot of people are very, that's again, that was something that was very confusing for me. Is like when I thought, okay, everyone's on the same page, you're a truther. So, we all believe the same. Oh, my heck, was I so wrong in that one? Like, no, we definitely not. And there's like 300 different variations of a truther, but I do feel that. So within the common law and within the assemblies, I do believe an assembly is needed. And I do wish to see the consolidation of all of the assemblies coming together as one. Now, there was the first meeting that was held, and I think it was maybe just, the intention, and I appreciated your comment on that meeting, I must be honest, because I basically purposefully took myself out of that meeting because I'm seen as quite a, I don't hold back, I'm very like vocal. And so I thought, well, it was just better to
As you
stand
should
back and
be.
watch.
Why should we not speak the truth?
Because again, it's your time, know your audience, stick in your
Okay.
lane.
Yeah.
I don't know. And again, it's this infighting, like, oh, Monette, you, and it was basically you and someone else is definitely not. You're very loud and nobody really likes you because so vocal about it. So maybe you should stand back and let somebody else. And I thought, what, stand back and let it happen. But what's really exciting is I know that they're meeting again on the 18th or the 19th, and there was some good comments that came out in the last like 15 or 20 minutes of it, where people were saying, it is time. So I know that they are looking at all of it. And to me, the work is, it says in Revelations, the harvest is great and the workers are few. So it is so crazy. I think there must be, I don't know how many people, but if I look at all of the different channels and amount of people, I don't think we're more than like 3,000 or 5,000, which is very little. I know that one day I spoke to somebody and they said, oh, they did a poll in Maine in the States, and there was only about 125 people that were actually sovereign. And that was okay.
But
It
Maine is
was,
a very woke state.
yeah, but still, that was just the comment then, and
Mm.
this person was there on, person, I'm not speaking in the legalese term. But yeah, and so that was, so I think we're about 2,000 or 3,000 and probably more, but I don't think more that are getting involved. And what's just so sad is everybody is trying to get into that same group. So one group took over the one channel, then put it back, but it's actually the same people. And how I know that is because I landed up on this new channel and then I was booted off of it because then they realized who I was or I got vocal. But either way, it doesn't matter. But that again, I'm saying is like, it's just so sad that we all going, instead of looking at an outreach of going and getting everybody involved, it was more that. So if I look at myself now going forward, I would like to, I'm still watching and waiting and seeing, but I definitely am more involved, would like to get more involved in educating people to start joining the common law group, start realizing that the only way to get out of this mess is to look at an alternative so that when the magic wand happens, we're not all left floundering, but we actually know that there is a system that is available and it is a good system. And I'm really proud of the work that I have a very small little team that we're doing the the litigations, and that is really, really working well. And the reason that I believe that we're working so well is we don't charge a cent. We don't ask for anything. We literally just saying to people, come in. If you've got a case, let's work together. And it's war by pen, and we all share our little, wins and losses and, that kind of thing. And to me, when people know that there if we all could stop paying and bring the banks down, but then there comes the next problem. And people have asked me this. So what happens when we bring the banks down? What are you going to do for the finances? But this, or what are we going to do for the banking going forward? And there are so many opportunities available. But this is where we need the assemblies, because the assembly needs to get together and say, okay, guys, so that is going to fall, but this is what we can do. And there's remedies to happen. What happens when the courts are not there? People think it's going to be anarchy, but it's not anarchy. Right now, I mean, when I was with the Jural in 2020, or the years go and come, but like 2023, when I did everything in 2023 pretty much to start this all. But in 2023, I was like, I put my name up and my daughter to be the recording secretary and recording office in Joburg, because we had no recording office. And then the fight for recording office. So the assembly that I just was with now, which is TASASA, the Sovereign Assembly, they then started their recording office, and it was like 2 weeks later, then the next one started their recording office. Now I think we're going on to the third recording office. Now we do need recording offices, but we need to be united so that wherever you are, you're not looking like you being unlawful. You mustn't get confused. Common law is actually more strict than maritime law. It really is, so it would be great if all of the recording officers and recording officers were all one, because that would make us be able to move along quicker and to just get things done. Our policing, our court system, we need to, even now we know that when somebody dies, it's the same as the birth and death certificate fraud. They're both, I mean, the cabal then gets money on that, on your straw man. So if we could just get morticians to register, not register, we don't register, we record. You can get whole new dictionary. I actually might start a dictionary for common law anyway. But so if we could start recording stuff like that, recording our births, because right now, if you don't record your birth, it's a major issue. And we know why, because they get money on that. So, if we stand united with our recording officers, if we stand united, we can get so much more done. Our policing, this nonsense of stopping us on the side of the road. I mean, it happened to my daughter and I yesterday, and shame, she really tried the common law way. And we still landed up having to pay out 200 for the fine, even though it was, you're traveling on the road, you're not driving and all of the stuff. But, really, if we are strong in our common law, and if we are strong and united with our assemblies, man, are we going to get so much further. But right now, people are laughing at us and, like kind of, oh, no, I'm not going to go that route. I don't think she's going to do that again. This time she said today she was stopped, and she just gave her license and, just went, because, and, that's what they do. And I think if we would just get together. So I think I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this, but I would like to see the unification and stop the division would be amazing. And so wherever God would want to lead me on that one, I'm prepared to pick up the gauntlet and go. But I don't want to be
absolutely necessary. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to take a step back, because, a lot of people are not that even, informed or educated yet what a recording office is. You mentioned obviously, but I just want to kind of make that clear for people. So when you live in the common law, you basically, instead of going to register your property at the masters, which basically means signing your property over to the government. Okay, but as soon as you register something, they own it. Like, look at the legal ramifications of that, and it's pretty clear. So anyway, so anything that you register at the masters, or at the baby, I think you would register
baby records.
Yeah. So these are basically setting up alternative recording offices that also provide proof that this baby or this home or whatever has been recorded, but it's not registered, and it doesn't fall under maritime law, and it doesn't fall under the corporation, which, if you separate yourself and you actually claim your living status, this is what you can do. So I 100% believe, agree, we won't be taken seriously unless there's unity and we at least come together. And in my humble opinion, people that can't see the bigger picture have perhaps other things that they need to look at, like their ego or whatever. Because if you don't want to join as one, then I would have to ask why and what are you fighting for?
Mm.
What are you really fighting for? Are you really fighting for the freedom of the people? Or do you have some ulterior motives here? And I think if we can just all unite around that, we're all human beings, we all struggle with the ego, none of us are perfect, but at the end of the day, just put it all down and just say, okay, how can we find the common ground? Let's agree to disagree on certain things, but let's agree on the main principles of how we do things, because that's when we become powerful as a movement, you know.
Exactly. And
Um, yeah, as I said, divided we fall, and we fall we will if we don't find a way to unite.
to
That's a fact.
me, one of the things, sorry, yeah, to me, one of the things that when you were asking, like, why would you not? I didn't feel like, has somebody been captured? Are we being infiltrated? Is there any ulterior motive? Because sure, we don't all get on, but it doesn't matter that as you're saying, it's a bigger picture. We don't all have to like each other. There are differences, and that's fantastic. Thank goodness, and you don't have to like everybody, but you just need to get on with the job at hand. And instead of just looking for the better one or whatever. So it is ego. It is 100% ego. And I can honestly say that that was one of the things with me totally was, I was state coordinator. I mean, what is that? It's a name. It's a horrible flippant thing to be because everybody's like, oh, Monette, the buck stops with you. And then when the buck stops with you, everyone's like, oh, you're acting all corporate. I'm like, well, hello. I mean, you're all telling me I have to make this decision. Then I make the decision and then I'm suddenly corporate. I was like, yeah, honestly, this is like a joke. I've got better things to do with myself. I'd say to people, I mean, I live at the coast. I can go boogie board and it's on the South Coast. It's warm. It's lovely. I can go do all other things. I don't have to be sitting here, half the people, I must be honest, that was there, I wouldn't employ. So, people say, oh, what do you think of so-and-so? Well, I wouldn't employ them, but I have to love them because they're doing this voluntarily. And I think that that's really something that we have to look at as well, is that if you're not doing it voluntarily, I'm not saying, I mean, everybody you are worth your salt, but a lot of us are actually doing it voluntarily and yet so harshly judged, and so yeah, maybe it was a bit of my ego that got hurt, and I was like, I can, like I say, go boogie board down the road. I don't need to do this. But I think really the bigger picture is that we have to, no matter if you like each other or not, or it's got to be fair and open and transparent. I think that's the thing that we're all lacking. It's at the moment. And one of the biggest things that I'm really going to say that I'm honestly, this is where I don't want to use the word scare or fearmonger, and I don't think they're going to get it right. Why I don't think they're going to get it right is because I know people and they are I'm sad to say it, maybe our audience, that we're talking to and people, that have got the right heart, but honestly, people are fickle. So I don't see everybody running with this Cape exit theory. But the DA has done a really good job at making everyone believe that the DA has actually got Cape Town right, which Cape Town, as far as I know, and I cannot prove it, and I would like for somebody to prove it or disprove it, but I believe that it has been sold, and which makes sense because it's part of that whole VOC and whatever else. But there's this group that is involved. They were involved with the common law, and they're involved in trying to mass emancipate. And I'd like to just bring up this word emancipate, because emancipate means when a slave master tells a servant or a slave that you are now emancipated from me. So they basically let you resign from them and they put you back on the market for somebody else to come and take you. It doesn't mean that you're free. It just means you're not working in my household anymore and I'm now going to put you back on the market. So that's really what emancipated means. So that's why we don't use that word emancipated anymore. We use politically status corrected, which means then that you are now resigning from the government. You are telling the government that the corporation, that you now know who they are and you're no longer going to be involved with them.
Because, by the
But
way, sorry if I can just mention, being a citizen,
hmm,
the meaning of that word is to be an employee. So if you are a
subject,
citizen of, a country, you are an employee of the state and you're fully responsible, for the debt, for
their
everything of that.
debt.
country, and I say country, but it's
Exactly.
actually a corporation, you're responsible for the debt of that corporation. So we don't want to be citizens.
No.
And I
And
fully
the
agree.
best thing, yeah, and the best thing that you can do, even if all of this is just weird, is resign. Well, take yourself off the IEC. Do not vote, because the minute that you take yourself, because what you're doing when you vote is you're basically giving the government power of attorney to do with you what they want. They can make the decision because you have said to them, you signed over power of attorney and said, lock me down for 20 days or 50 days or 100 days, take away cigarette and whatever you want to do with me, and I'm okay because I've given you that power of attorney. So even if you don't go through any of this political status or anything, that is the first thing that you should be doing, is saying, I'm not going to vote. But a very interesting fact is that only 36% of South Africans voted in this last election. Surely that is not an election. I mean, that
How
is
can an
something that
election
if
like
we
that be
all had
valid?
to stand up.
If it's not for the, that's not what the people want, clearly. So who makes you
No,
the
no.
decider that these are the candidates
How
that
do you
you
do
can
it?
vote for in your corporation? It's like, no, we don't want to be part of that. And you're right. Just
Exactly.
at least if you're too scared to go through the whole process, just take yourself from the, um,
The
from the
IEC.
AAC and at least not have that power of attorney because it is true,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, just take that. I mean, that is the very least you can do. And then once you do that, you make a decision, because the minute that you do that, it's empowering you to say, I no longer. But if you're still voting, then you're in their system. You shouldn't be moaning. If you're registered and you're still voting, then it's like these guys that stand on the side of the road and beg me for money. It's like, who did you vote for, my bro? Go stand outside their office. Don't come standing here and whatever. It's the same thing. So that is one of the most important things that you do, is you say that I'm no longer part of this corporation, because really that's what you're doing. But with this group, there's a group that is pushing mass emancipation. Now they're calling it emancipation, which to me is like, now they've since then changed it now to politically status corrected. But because I was basically calling them out saying, no, you're 100% right. You are emancipating, because now they want you to go in and sign this mass thing that they want to take the Cape away from South Africa, which it's been done, and it's part of the VOC's playbook and everything else, the whole cabal's playbook. And they want to now say to people that if you don't emancipate with them, and you don't follow their rules and pay it's almost like going and living in a Dainfern estate or a Steyn City. I don't know. You can see I'm from Joburg, that kind of estate. And you've got to pay the levies, and you've got to listen to their rules. And aesthetically, I was town planning as well, so, and building plan
Mm.
approval, so I know all that nonsense. So it's basically just signing up. I mean, I would never buy a house in an estate, because it's like somebody ruling you all over again. And that's what they're going to do to the Cape. And they're saying, oh no, but we mass emancipating, and they're going and they're causing quite a bit of a stir up within the different First Nation groups. I mean, we had a discussion, I think, once about the Sasha Stone. He was also trying to do something in that line. Now he's gone over to Zambia, interestingly. He's gone to Zambia to go and do it near Livingston, apparently. That's where he's on his way to now, because there was such infighting that was happening between all the chiefs, and that he decided it was too much drama and he would rather go off. But that is another sad thing. I mean, if all the First Nations, if all the Zulus, if all the causes, everybody, one of the things that I found out when I was studying was that if you and let's not talk about now being a maritime slave and a slave to the corporation, but really the white South Africans that arrived here, if they arrived and were brought in because the Khoi and the San and the causes were like, we're not going to be your slaves. We're not going to work for you. We're not going to do this. So they let them be, and they brought a whole lot of whites. And so by bringing the whites in, and then they put them onto kind of like reservation reserves or whatever it was, they would get you a house, and they would pay you. So the only thing is that you were an employee, so you were 100% employed. And that's where the VOC, and that's why I said, like, it just, if you look at the dates and everything, it just makes so much sense how they did this whole Sesquivi in 1666 and all of this. because the whites that were brought in were really, they came in as slaves and were made as slaves and just got a salary for it. But the Khoi and the San and those, another sad bit of reality, and I learned this very much more in Zambia than brought it back here, was I was involved with a guy. It was amazing. We had such fantastic talks and things. He was head of the national heritage in Zambia. And we were sharing, we were saying we wanted to do a thing of going Livingstone's path, because he was involved in Livingston, obviously at Big Falls, and then he was embalmed in just outside Serenge, on the northern part of Zambia, where he was embalmed there, and then he was sent off to his inners remained there, and he was sent off to Scotland. So they've got that monument and that. So we were talking about it. Most of the chiefs and most of the chieftainesses in those areas were not happy with that whole story, because why? They actually sold the people out. And that, to realize that your chiefs and your kingdoms and your chieftainesses and your kings and all of these people actually sold you out. And that unfortunately is still happening today. Money talks, the
Money
puppeteers,
talks,
money
and
talks
no
also
one is
talk.
immune to it. Only those that follow the ethical path, the spiritual path, and
Yes.
unfortunately, yeah, as I say, everyone gets tempted, and no one is too good to,
And
as you say,
that's
the chiefs, and yeah, that's very interesting and interesting actually. The first slaves were white, I believe, Irish, so they were not black, which is interesting. And when the Dutch and the English arrived here, there were no Zulus or Xhosas in this region. They all came from up north. The Khoi and the San were the original people that were here. So if you think about it, we have all equal kind of, not right, I would say, but we're basically guardians of the land, you
We
know.
are, and we all slaves. All of
Yeah,
us in our,
we're
let's
all
just
dead
unite and
slaves.
realize, yeah,
Yeah.
no one is better than others,
We're just
and
fighting
they
each other
cause
for
that
what? So
division.
that the 1% can control us. That is just so
Exactly.
juvenile. I think one day we'll look
Exactly.
back at this madness, not knowing how we got there.
That's exactly it. So yeah, we were. And I think if we can all just come to that realization that, I mean, even the Khoi and the San, they came down because obviously, I mean, business dictated that. And that is what happens when, everybody migrated because the ships were coming, the British and the Portuguese and the Spanish and whoever else was coming down, they all needed the beef and the cattle and the milk and all of that. So they came down to make money off them. And then the British and that thought, oh well, and the VOC decided, oh well, let's try and make, let's get them to work for us. And they went, not a damn. And not only was it the whites that were brought in, but it was the Indians, it was the Chinese, it was the Japanese. Everybody was brought in as slaves. So we literally, the whole lot of us were brought into South Africa. So who owns South Africa? Yes, the Khoi and the San definitely is, and that's probably why they were so hard hit, because they definitely were the original on the land. You know what I mean? They lived here, but they were higher up than South Africa that we know, but still, they were definitely the first, but they actually had it better, but their kings and them sold them out and then pushed them back because of that. If they didn't get pushed back and if they stood their ground, but what do we say? If, could have, would have, should have, nothing. It's where we are today, and it's time that we realize that we've all been nailed.
Absolutely, and the weird thing is nobody should actually own any part of this earth, and that's the biggest subject. We all here as guardians, none of us, and in fact, we didn't even originate here. So, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But
It's good.
the fact of the matter is, you were born on this land. We have a right to live here. Birds don't pay rent to the trees, you know, etc., etc. And so it's going to take a few years for that mindset to kind of change. But I want to kind of segue into, the whole spiritual aspect, since you said you're a spiritual being and having an earthly experience, as do all of us. Because I think a lot of people kind of separate the two, and actually correcting your status, claiming your sovereignty is a very spiritual thing to do it's spiritually incredibly freeing. It's like realizing that you are divine, and you know that you have a right to be here, and you have a right not to have anyone rule over you. um, and I think trying to separate the common law from that is quite dangerous, because a lot of people just looked at the nuts and bolts, and they just look at sort of recent history, and they don't understand their bigger place, um, you know on this planet. And I think that is important, because when you don't consider both the spiritual and the physical, things start to go wrong. We get off track. So, yeah, maybe tell us a bit about, you said you had a spiritual awakening. I mean, I had one as well, a big one. And, it's a continuous journey. How that influenced how you see things and how you actually became interested, because I think our brothers and sisters that haven't had that, they can't understand what happened to us. You will only understand if you go through that spiritual awakening and you realize, really, like, just in that moment, how things actually work, on this planet and beyond.
And yeah, I'm getting my goosebumps, which is always when I feel like source is the closest. But yeah, talking about common law and spirituality, I kind of say when you go through this process of politically status correcting, I'm going to use the correct term, it is an outward manifestation of what has actually happened within you. So you've got to be free from the inside first. You can't do it the other way around, because it's got to be something. So I kind of feel like I have been politically status corrected for most of my life. I took my son out of school when he was 12 years old because he was being bullied. I didn't like the school system, and everybody was saying to me, oh, you're not allowed to do that. So I actually went to the newspaper and told them, well, what would you like me to do with my son? You're not providing me with the proper stuff. What would you like me to do? Because the schools were all full. I mean, look at people, they're camping outside houses, schools for months, and then, pushing it. So yeah, I have been, and then with regards to even tax, I've just never paid. So it's an inward, it's something that happens that you on the outward, just manifesting it. But in 2015, I had quite an awakening. It was really crazy. I was involved in town planning and building plan approvals with the council. So you can imagine that was one of the most stressful jobs. Yeah, you muted.
I was muted. I want to say my favorite subject, house plan approvals.
Yeah, and town planning. Very interesting on that is the surname Risi. If you know near Cresta, the next town next to that is Risidale. So actually, that is my forefathers, my great grandfather, actually with his brother. So the school, Risidale School, is actually in my grandfather's name, Michele Street. So that's quite interesting. So I one day said to my dad, how did I end up in town planning? And he said, oh, well, your uncle. And I was like, oh, obviously. But I never knew that town planning was even a subject to go into. It was so weird how it just shows you how you can be divinely led. But in 2015, I was really, I was at Raymer at the time as well. And I just remember standing and everybody was like saying, Jesus is Lord, Jesus is everything. And just look, just giving Jesus all the praise and worship, which is, I don't want to offend anybody, but I was looking at everybody and we were all broken. Nobody was like actually happy. And I was like, Jesus, what have I done? Like, seriously, at this point of my life, like, really, what have I done? Because I've always been a spiritual person. So I took a bit of time to go within, I think, more than without, as Jesus being there. And one of the books that was really amazing was The Shack. And if anybody knows me, they would know that I would buy The Shack and hand it out like the Bible in a way. It was just one of the most amazing things. And that taught me, and if I can put it into a nutshell, that showed me that instead of Jesus and God being over there, it was like I jumped on their lap. I jumped onto God's lap, and I was like, it just brought everything home for me to go internal, and everything was there. And I remember one part of the book where it said, this Mac had lost his daughter and he was going to go see his daughter, and they walked on water, like Peter walked on water, and he was like walking. And then on the way back, he was so excited having seen his daughter, and he got this release and peace of realizing that where she is and she was fine, that he was running back onto the water and he was drowning. He was going down, and he looked back at Jesus and he said to Jesus, like, what's up? You know, what's happening? And Jesus said to him, don't walk behind me, don't walk in front of me, you walk with me. And that's when you actually, that is how you go. And so I had this experience of learning, and I did a lot of inner work. I remember my son coming to me. I gave up all my businesses, all my everything. I just literally did. I had not the most pleasant experience about at church. I could actually write a book on visiting a church on a Friday, because Jesus must not visit church on a Friday. He'll be shocked. Seriously, he'll be shocked, because on Friday you have to fit in lines and everything. On a Sunday, oh no, you know, open the doors, Jesus is welcome. But on a Friday, not such a good idea, especially not near lunchtime. So no, so you know, he mustn't do that one. But anyway, so it was really amazing that I left the traditional, although if you can call yourself at Rhema traditional, but that's, I've always been different. So, but I left that, and I just found a spirituality that I never had before. And from there, it was like that what led me to sell everything that I owned except for the property. Everything. The night that the day actually that the auction was happening, my young son, he was about 14 at that stage, my youngest, and he said to me, oh, I don't know where my shoes are. I said, well, on the day that we're auctioning everything, say goodbye to those shoes, because everything got auctioned. We had beds the night before, the next day, no beds, nothing. The whole house, absolutely empty. And we traveled up, and I think that is where I learned faith. People would say, like, where are you going? Where are you driving? And I just tune in, and I'd go there, and we'd go there. And I actually landed up in Zimbabwe in a halfway house. They actually call it halfway house. And the nuns there, the nun and the priest that was there, actually in our book, they wrote, they thanked us for coming and teaching them faith. They actually said that they kind of had lost their faith, and just watching how we were working and going. And that was where I got my big awakening, was just really learning to work with faith. And I turned around to God at that stage, and I said, the churches do fantastically on 10%. I mean, they look at what they do with 10%. So guess what? I'm giving you 90. I'll take the 10, but then you're taking all parts of my shitty character with it. Like if I have a 10%, I say to people, sorry, this is my 10%. So I'm known to say, well, okay, I had a 10% on my ego. But I said to God, you take everything with it. Finance, drama, all of that. You can have 90%, and I live on the 10. And it's been an amazing walk. And I must be honest, it's due to that I was able to sign a bill of exchange, which is really, that's another interesting subject we can tackle on that, because really the very house that I never auctioned or anything, that was the house that I've signed a bill of exchange. And like I said, everything, God just, I can say that I do, look, I mess up. I mess up. You know, nobody come judge, you know what I mean? But that's my 10%, you know? And but majority of my life, it's a spiritual being. And one thing I have realized with God as well is he's never taken, because of my personality and who I am, he never shows me more than what I need to see. Because if I had woken up like these poor souls in like 1999 with all of that, I think I would have platzed. I would not be here today. Not a chance. I would have died. I mean, I'm dying from 2022, and it's only 5 years. I mean, I remember going on the 11th of the 11th, this is going to happen, and it didn't happen. And then I don't know how they've done it. I really don't know. And the Zimbons and all these people, I can't, you know. And God has just been amazing, because it was one of the books, and I can't remember where I read it, but it was like, it's like the light shining in front of you, and God just gives you beams you in the middle of the night. You can't see where you're going, but you just know that you're on the path, and you just follow that line. And I think that's how I'm living my life. But I definitely am very appreciative of the fact that he didn't show me and wake me up. Like I said, I was still in line, waiting to see old Gibson in state, you know, or his double or whoever. You know, I was still that girl. But I definitely, he gives us all different gifts. And I think just appreciating, and since that time, I have learned to just trust and believe that things will unravel and unfold at the right time. And it's just listening and believing.
That really rings true. I always said also, I was divinely led. The crumbs were laid in front of me as I needed them.
Mm,
Isn't that
mm,
just amazing? It just
mm.
appears in front of you, and then you go, and then you don't know where you're going next, but then the crumbs appear again, when you're ready for them, when you've digested
Yeah.
the other crumbs. And
Mm,
that is, this kind of spiritual path.
mm, mm.
And just being brave enough to go all the way and not to look back and not to look away either. We've had to face a lot of darkness, which many people today still don't want to face, and it's cognitive dissonance. No, that can't be happening. That can't be true. At the end of the day, also we do this for the little ones. I always say to people that is the one of the biggest reasons why we do what we do, not only to save the little ones from the horrors, but also to provide a better future for the little ones that are being born now that are safe. We don't want them to go through what we went. We want a better life for them. And
Definitely.
yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I always see a lot of similarities in people's own journey and experience. And as you say, I'm also thankful I didn't wake up 20 years ago. Some of those people seem very like impatient and grumpy, bless their soul right now. But we all have a unique puzzle piece, and we wake up when we're meant to wake up. We take that call up and we said, okay, I'm in. I'm going all the way. I'm all fours in. I'm going to do this, and I'm speaking my truth, and I'll be unafraid. Um, but you have to go through certain other experiences first. Like you said, you were led to town planning for a reason. Maybe that'll be a part of what you do in the future, creating these communities and understanding how these little towns or communities are planned. I don't know, but just like myself, spending so many years in business doing what I did, which doesn't quite make sense at this point, but I know it'll make sense, in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely. It taught me to read statutes, acts, and ordinances.
hmm
Very
yeah,
boring, but it can be done, and how much, and that is actually so interesting if anybody wants to go down rabbit holes. I know it sounds weird and crazy, but that is the only true history we really do have because they had to put it into statutes, acts, and ordinances to make it a rule. So only then could you realize how draconian something was, or how, they slipped something in. I mean, I can honestly say I never knew about Port Edward Island. In my life, I never knew about Port Edward Island. I mean, there's no pamphlets going, oh, let's go to Port Edward Island in the, on its way to Antarctica. Another bottle of wine is old Antarctica. And
definitely
I know
not a
South Africa.
tourist destination.
Definitely. Well, they don't allow us there. And I mean, there's so many people I know that would love to go and actually go and explore and be there, but they don't allow it. And obviously we know for those reasons, there's whole that's yeah. But yeah, it's just interesting. So statutes, acts, and ordinances, I tell you, are the ones that if you really want to know, because that is the true history. That is when you really know that that happened in 1994. Actually, the 22nd of June, yes, I'm going to go back, but I'm going to go about 1992. I'll get the thing. But that day was when they decided that they were going to go back into the Commonwealth in 1994. And that's all there, and it's all, and they can't deny it. And I think that is what has made us so successful with our bills of exchange, and that is because we're able to quote their statutes, acts, and ordinances and say, well, if it's there, why? Like the Stamp Act. Nobody would have thought about the Stamp Act, but the Stamp Act is what really speaks about it. And and it's just learning and going down them. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting, so yeah, that's what I believe why I was doing town planning, was so that I could get my head around all of these statutes, acts, and ordinances, because it's otherwise it's dry reading.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it's just like they can't even go there. It's legalese. It's like there's a block in their mind. And why do you think we never learn about this in school? That would have been useful to understand our constitution, our acts, or how to read legal documents. Why were we never taught that? Why were we taught all the nonsense and the lies, but never
Well,
taught
we know
proper
why.
things and that were going to help us in life?
We know
Because
why.
we know
We
why.
know why. They kept us dumb. They dumbed us down. And then we can go on to the whole health thing. I mean, oh my goodness, I'm not vegan, because of the fact that they actually are probably will be more human in vegan meat than what there is vegan meat. You know what I mean? So I just cannot eat that stuff. I mean, the first Beyond Burger I first said to everyone, "Are you sure this is not meat?" I had it, I was sick. I've had it 4 times in my life, and every time I had it, and eventually my partner said to me, "But no, I said, it's me, is it me?" And he said, "Every time you eat it, you get sick." And then I realized that's all Bill Gates's, yeah. So, I don't even call myself vegan anymore, because you can't be vegan, because I won't eat Nestle, because we talk about the little ones and we talk about what Nestle is. So I refuse to have Nestle.
Even Coca-Cola. Well, I mean,
Oh,
it's got to be part of
Heineken.
Heineken, Coca-Cola, Pepsi,
So,
wine gums, you name it. It's all got human stuff in there. More
and we tell
specifically,
people and they go,
baby.
"Ooh." What killed me though, and I know now we're really going on a tandem, and maybe like I don't know what time, but really what killed me was when I listened. There was an American group that were actually telling people on the sidewalk that this has got human. He has Bob's leg, he has this, and people were eating it and saying it was delicious. They were being told they were told. Now, whether it was or wasn't, they were saying, "You are now eating cannibal stuff," and just they ate it.
No, it's
So you
terrible.
tell
And
somebody,
people
"No,
are
don't
just
eat
become,
McDonald's."
I don't know. I don't understand, the average human.
Calcification of the third
And
eye.
they'll make a joke out of it. That's the worst. And then, you start going down the pig rabbit hole. That pig is actually part human DNA, you know? All these rabbit holes. Yeah, I feel sorry for the sleepers having to go through all of this, but I guess that's why we woke up early to help them, although I just,
Do we help them? I don't know, because they think we're crazy. I've been
yeah.
told I'm uneducated and that. And then when I have a conversation, then it's like, "Oh, okay," because I mean, it's just crazy as it is. But yeah, we pray. And that's what I know the two of us joked. I mean, there was this fantastic meme that said there, "I say no to reincarnation."
That's your free will right, right? You can say no. No, I think many of us feel like this is the last round. Seriously, we
Uh-huh.
can't do this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I'm in conversation with my higher self going, what happened? But yeah, we signed
Do
up,
you
we're here,
actually know what we
and
signed up for? Are you sure you knew what we signed up for?
what, were you okay? What happened? Let me negotiate this. But yeah, that's where you have to just trust and blindly go. And that's again why I say I really am so grateful that I didn't wake up like the others, with 9/11. I know where I was when 9/11 happened, like with the world going, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember the exact moment where I was sitting, these old computers where I was working. Knew nothing about nothing back then,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess always had a secret interest in all these hidden stuff. But it's all just so fascinating, and it's so rewarding, It just we really, I think people like us just love doing research. We love to learn. We love to grow. That is like what gives me the biggest kick. Not anything else.
Mm.
Not watching movies or having superficial conversations. Just give me, a good book. And I've never liked fiction, actually. I've never liked fiction books. Maybe when I was really like a teenager, I liked
Yeah.
fiction. But as soon as I was in my 20s, like, no, this is a waste of time. And I think all of us had that kind of eternal yearning to improve ourselves even before our awakening. So yeah, we all have a lot in common, and I'm sure the whole audience are going to agree with that. So, but that was a
Mm.
fascinating discussion, and maybe
Thank you.
another time we can go down the BOE rabbit hole,
Yeah.
because that's a very people always ask me, okay, so how do I do a BOE? Just explain to me so I can do it. It's like, no, be prepared to go really deep down the rabbit hole, because you need to understand how the whole system works and how it came to be before you can even dream of doing a BOE.
Do
So that's a
that.
bills of exchange for those who know, like our
Promissory
birth
notes.
certificates pay for everything, and we can use that trust to pay for stuff, and that's legal tender. But of course, yeah, even our institutions and banks don't know that. But I have a feeling things are going to start changing very soon, and I can't wait for the whole banking system to implode
Yes, yes.
and the
And again,
fractional
that's when we
banking.
need our assemblies. That's why we need the assemblies to be able to catch the people to say that it's not
Yeah,
the end of the world.
yeah,
But we'll see what happens with all of that because I'm trusting and believing now that Trump is going to do something a lot quicker for us.
yeah,
Trump as him with his, as we know, like watching overseas and the movie as it is. But I'm just praying that his persona, for want
yeah.
of a
I
better
mean,
word, just gets it going. The white hats, because yeah, that's very interesting and
yeah, he's the figurehead. He's the
figurehead.
personality that can kind of get things moving on the
There we
world
go.
stage and whatever we need to do, because this is a very big and complex operation. Like, you know,
It is.
rooting out the cabal, removing the crown, imploding that whole system is not something you can just do on the fly.
Mm.
But yeah, I think we're winning. So
Yeah, I
we'll
do.
get there. People just need to be a little bit more patient and use this time to do their own inner work and growth, so that when things shift, we are ready and we are ready to lead the pack to this beautiful new earth.
I do believe, though, we'll have to have an EBS. I can't see it working the
Yeah.
way the algorithms and that work. I can't see it working any other way other than through an EBS, because just even when I go into people's house and I go, okay, let's go onto YouTube and let's do the Cabbage Patch. Oh my soul, the Cabbage Patch movie, that little song, the Cabbage Patch Dolls from whatever that comes on, and I'm like, no, there must. I sometimes I think, am I living in a different timeline? Like,
Well, why do
and
you think
the
they did that
algorithm,
movie? Because
eh?
they wanted to, change the Google algorithms. When you Google that, these silly things come up. So,
Yeah. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm trying to get it, and I'm looking like such an idiot because I'm like trying to get it, and the algorithm is like on the Cabbage Patch Dolls. I'm like, seriously, honestly, and that's it. So I honestly believe that the EBS is going to be the way that, and I don't know how, but that is the only one that is going to get everyone to go, okay, wait, what? This is it. But the
I
white hats
agree.
seem to think slowly, but I hope we'll all survive for the slowly. I know you're saying be patient. Some days I've got more patience than others. Some days
Me too.
yeah, I'm glad I never had the vaccine that, but unfortunately two of mine did, out of the four. So
Mm.
that's quite sad, but
Yeah,
it
my
is
whole
what it
family
is.
as well. So what can you do? You can only do so much.
Yeah,
And just
signed
respect
up
their
for it.
decision, because I guess there are no mistakes and there was a reason
No,
for that, even if we can't fathom that now. And we just gotta love them anyway. And
their soul signed up for it. That's it.
yeah.
That's what it is.
Interesting
Thank
times we
you.
live in, but it's a beautiful time to be alive. I'm grateful, even though some days I don't know how I signed up for this. It's
Up and
exciting.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. But thank you
yeah.
so much, Monette, for sharing all of that wealth of
Pleasure.
information. That was super interesting, and hopefully we can do it again. Is there anything else you want to share, or any other links? I don't know if
I think if anybody wants more, whatever, then they can pop it into, ask questions, pop it into the comments, and then we'll just take it from there and just see if people want to hear more, what they want to hear about. And then maybe we can bring Raleigh in and reel him into staying on topic and not getting too, because if you really want a study session, but, we can look at different ways. So I think let's just wait and see what the reaction is and what people want to learn. But it is exciting times, and it is time that we do concentrate on South Africa and unite South Africa and know that we really do have the golden nugget, and they've
Mhm.
just messed with us. And even if it is learning and getting involved in the assemblies is really, I would love to say the assembly, but let's see how they get that together. But it really is important, because until we can really unite, we're not going to take down the system, and we're just going to constantly be bombarded with all of this nonsense. So it's exciting times, as you say. Some days you think, what? And other days it's like, oh, it's so exciting. So yeah, I have felt like I've equated it to being watching a rugby match on my own. But it's exciting when it does all get revealed. And I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, me.
No, um, yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to you for being so brave, for speaking out, for, you know, refusing to
And
back
to you.
down and to all of the work that you do because and you've been very brave. I mean, selling everything on auction and people always ask me, but how do I leave the matrix? It's like, you know what? You've got to make some sacrifices. You just got
Yeah.
to, what are you prepared to give up? What are you prepared to give up? You can't keep all your comforts and all your, you've got to compromise some way. Otherwise, you've got to keep going back to the banks and take out their loans and buy the cars that they own and the houses. And what are you prepared to compromise? At the end of the day, all these material things mean nothing. And
You know, Nina, you say that. If I tell you how many households I could furnish with God throwing me furniture back, I can't tell you. It's like I have more household furniture than I know what to do with, and I sold everything, and it just keeps coming back. And that's what it is. God says, don't be a swamp, be a river, and don't hoard because he will give you, he will, and he, the great I am. I mean, I'm not going to go gender on myself, but yeah, and that's it. So really, just do. And God, I learned this from Ray. I'm not going to lie. Ray McCauley always used to preach that 2/3 of God's name is go. And then I furnished it with my own. If you spell God backwards, it's dog. So if you go backwards 2/3, it's go do. And if you just go out and do something, then God gives you the momentum. You started the momentum for
exactly.
God to work. But if you don't, you can't do anything if you're just going to be sitting on your laurels and, having fear. And
Yeah.
fear is mentioned 365 times in the Bible. I believe people have shared that with me. I haven't
Hmm.
counted it. So if there's a little bit more, then I'm sorry, or less. But I've heard 365 times God mentions do not fear. And that's one for every day.
Hmm. I love that. There's
Yeah.
really nothing to fear.
No.
People should just be brave and do something. Even if you don't think it's the right thing, even if you don't know where you're going, just do something. And I guarantee you, the crumbs will appear in front of you and you'll know what to do tomorrow. That's just,
Exactly.
you know. Anyway, that was really lovely. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. And
Thank you.
I'll, if you can give me that link, I'll pop it in the show notes
I'll
below, and then let's continue this incredible conversation next time. Thank you so much,
absolutely.
Monette. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Have a good one. Thank you.
Bye.